Hello and welcome to Career Talk. I'm Lee Hopwood, CEO at the CCMA and host of this live show where I chat with contact centre professionals to find out about their career journeys so far. Now, every story is different and inspiring, and if you haven't listened to a Career Talk before, please do go and check out some of the amazing people I've spoken to in the past. And there is a real variety in career paths available in the contact centre industry. And there is no doubt it truly is a great place to work. Now, joining me today is Vince Scibetta. He is the Customer Care Centre Manager at Diabetes UK. Now, Vince joined several senior leaders from the industry at one of our executive dinners recently. And as he introduced himself, he talked about the depth of his career, and there were things in his career that I didn't know he had done. So I took full advantage of the situation and asked him to join me on Career Talk. So here we are. Welcome, Vince.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me along to do this session with you, Lee.
And do you know what? I really genuinely can't wait to dive back into your career. But before we go back to the beginning, can you tell us what your role is today? So you are the Customer Care Centre Manager at Diabetes UK. What does that mean you're responsible for?
So that means I'm responsible for the supporter care teams. So looking after our supporters, making sure that we're giving good stewardship. I also look after our helpline. So that's the helpline that supports people living with or affected by or at risk of diabetes. Really to help them through what can be a really difficult time and giving them the advice and guidance that they need in order to live well with their diabetes. I also look after our online community forum. So that's a peer-to-peer support forum. And that's a really great place for people living with diabetes to share their experiences, ask questions, and really get some support from when they need it from others lived experience support from people that are living with diabetes. I also look after our advocacy services. So that's really working with people with diabetes where they might be having situations in their job or children at school, really to kind of help them understand what their rights are in those scenarios, and empower them to go off and with the right information and maybe some questions that they could ask to challenge those situations and get a positive outcome as a result. And I have a small reporting team as well, as you'd expect in the contact centre.
And do you know what? It's fascinating, Diabetes UK. So it's a charity. And one of the things that has really come to the fore in the last 12 months, we talked about it in the Salary and Skills Guide, is that what candidates are looking for, what people are looking for, is to work for an organisation that has real purpose. And clearly, working for Diabetes UK has real clear purpose. Was that something that was really interesting to you when you went for the job at Diabetes?
Yes. On a personal note, I'd had a brush with diabetes myself.
Okay.
And I wasn't quite diabetic, but I was pre-diabetic, so made some really significant lifestyle changes to that and managed to prevent myself from getting diabetes. But I actually was headhunted by an agency around that time, and it just kind of connected. The right thing at the right time. And I think the difference for me about working for other organizations as opposed to a charity is that you are the kind of gratitude that you get from people. We've had people call our helpline and then donate 50 quid to pay for the call. And it's that kind of you just cannot get that anywhere else. So I think it's all it is that you leave the office that day feeling that you've done something for the greater good of people. And I think that for me, having been through lots of commercial organizations, they've all had their own kind of drivers for me, but I think having stepped into this world, I think nothing can beat it.
Do you know what? And that's so good. And in your career, you're right. You've had you've worked for commercial organisations. You've also spent a little bit of time at the NHS. So we'll dive into that in a moment. I want to go back to the very beginning. So, age of 16, did you go on to further education, or did you go straight into a job? Tell us about what you did after you finished GCSEs or O levels.
CSEs they were at the time, Lee. I was the last year that did CSEs before they turned into the GCSEs.
I wouldn't have put you at I would have said you were at least O levels, if not GCSEs. But go on, tell us.
You know, when I left school, I didn't particularly have great results.
Okay.
So I, you know, was looking for jobs. I'd worked in a supermarket, you know, just for pocket money. But obviously needed to find something a bit more full time. So I applied for a kind of a customer accounts clerk job at British Gas. Got a call back from them saying, you know, you don't have the experience for that, but we do have a scheme for young people that have just come out of school to give them some, you know, diverse work experience. So I'm sure many on this call or this chat won't remember the youth training scheme in the 80s.
YTS.
YTS, yeah. But it was called a youth training program. And, you know, the great thing about it is that we got paid £10 more than the government scheme per week. So that, you know, that was obviously a huge attraction. But yeah, it was a really fascinating time for me. So I agreed to go on that. You know, we had an induction, which was a week away, doing some outbound activities. So doing abseiling and, you know, all of those kinds of activities. And we were actually there in the storm of 87.
Wow.
So that day that we had that, you know, that Michael Fish moment. Oh no, yes. There's no hurricane coming. I was in the depths of Kent, in a place called Crowborough, in this activity.
Not far from Sevenoaks.
Yes. You know, happily, you know, with young people like myself from all different areas of the eastern region of British Gas at the time. And I always remember, so we went into the bar and we were not supposed to be in the bar at 16, but we were. And then our kind of leader realised that and then dragged us all out. But there was this massive oak tree that was outside this bar. And we were staying in a log, like a 4-story log thing. And, you know, this tree was like shaking like anything. And I thought, God, that thing's going to fall over. So anyway, 3 a.m, we're all called out of our digs. I thought it was an exercise. And I thought they can't be serious. You know, 3 a.m. in the morning, they're getting us like to do some activity. Got outside and this tree had literally landed on top of where we were sleeping.
Wow.
So we're all put in the dining room. And yeah, so that was, you know, quite an exciting introduction to
first
that
foray
time.
into
Anyway,
working.
I digress. But yeah, the youth training program was a program whereby when British Gas was regional, every region did everything for that area. So I got assigned to an area office and I literally went around every department. So I worked in the showrooms, I worked in the stores. So pulling screws and, you know, bits of copper and all that kind of stuff together, putting them in bags, so that the engineers could go out and fix people's boilers and radiators and all of that sort of stuff. Went out with meter readers, went out with engineers. So got a really broad view of all the different operations. And I ended up doing my last piece. So this team insisted on keeping me within their team, and it was a team called Credit Records. So we were setting up all new. So when a house was built, or, you know, a estate of houses was built, we set up all the new supplies. you know, doing the paperwork for me, you know, for the old slot meters to be emptied. So really kind of fascinating stuff. So it was coming towards the end, and British Gas had made a decision to centralise some of the work, and the work that I'd been doing for that last 6 months was being centralised into the billing centres. And I happened to have the central billing centre in my hometown. So I applied for a role there, got it, and so that was firstly, so we had assistant customer accounts clerks, customer accounts clerks, supervisors, etc. So I was basically, you know, someone doing the filing, you know, doing all the paperwork, supporting the customer accounts clerks. Then I kind of progressed into customer accounts clerks, and at that time, everything was done. You know, we had areas, like smaller areas within that region that we covered, and you know, we had a phone on the desk, one green screen that we had to share. So if someone rung up, like, you'd be swapping round to kind of answer the customer query. And then a couple of years into that, the world of contact centres started. So it started off very small. So we called it the phone bank. So there were literally 9 turrets at the end of the office. We had an LED little box that just literally told you the number of calls that were waiting. And we were scheduled to go on that every, you know, for 2 hours a day. And as time progressed, we then had what we called a customer information centre, and that looked more like a traditional contact centre of today. And it just grew and grew. And so that's where my management career started as well, at the age of 23. So quite a long time ago, managing a team of advisors answering customer queries about their gas bills.
How many advisors did you have in your team?
So I had 12.
Yeah.
But the contact centre had over 1,000.
Wow.
And we took 27,000 calls a day just in that one office. So there were 8 of those replicated across the UK. So British Gas was centralising slowly into what it is today.
So how far did you go in your career at British Gas? Where, at what point did you decide you were going to leave, and what role were you doing at that point?
I was a team manager, so I also got a lot of other skills from that. So I also worked in debt collection for them, and you know, credit management. I also set up a database, national database, on Lotus Approach, for those that remember Lotus Approach. And that database was so there was a big problem with void properties, so where we had no name of but we knew that gas was being used. So we were the national team to deal with that. And yeah, as I say, I set up these eight mirror images to look at each area. And you know, when I look back and talk about that at the time, that just didn't seem much, but now actually doing that is quite a big thing. And we used to have automated reports, but they weren't like data as we know data today. They were physical, like printed reports, and I set up a program that would download those reports, highlight the information, and populate each of the fields that it needed to in the approach system. So I was offered a role at our Solihull office, which was the central kind of data centre.
Yeah.
Which I turned down because I loved working with people and having that customer thing. But that was to potentially, you know, at the time was potentially a mistake, because later on we heard that they were closing our office, so the centralisation was continuing.
Yeah.
And you know, they're really.
And do you? I mean, you've had a fantastic career since, but do you ever? You just said that that was maybe a mistake.
Not now.
You don't think that now, but at the time, shortly after, you thought,
yeah, you know, I had young children,
taking the opportunity.
you're thinking, how am I going to pay my mortgage and support my family? And my wife worked there as well, so it was both of us out of a job at the same time. So she worked in the call center, and I worked in the credit control team. So yeah, it was quite a scary time. But I don't regret it. We could have moved around the country with our children, and if I look at British Gas today, most of it's abroad.
Yes.
So how far do you follow it?
Yes.
So, for me, although it was potentially a bad thing at the time, I actually then moved into airlines.
So tell us about your time at EasyJet.
So initially I started off at Go.
Oh, did you? Okay.
I did. So Go was the British Airways subsidiary, the snob above EasyJet. And yeah, worked there for some time. Absolutely loved it. I did send someone to Bilbao though on a beach holiday in my training, and got some feedback on that. Because I just assumed that it's all about holidays. I didn't realise business trips and stuff. And like I can remember it now, saying there's beaches there, and you'll love it, sort of thing. And one of the supervisors, one of my peers, but obviously was looking after me in my training. We sent this customer to Bilbao, and it's a business destination, not a holiday destination. I was like, oh. But they changed the flight and sorted it all out for the customer. But yeah, so that was a great time. So I worked in the sales centre there to start with. So I had
interesting. So quite different to credit control, which is where you were before.
Yeah, and customer service as well. So that was good. Loved that. The whole kind of ethos of the organisation as well.
Yeah.
Headed up by the lovely Barbara Kasani. And yeah, then we got the news that EasyJet were obviously frightened of us as a competitor, and Stelios wanted to buy us.
So you then moved into EasyJet.
So then I moved into EasyJet, and although at the time, that was a difficult move because we loved Go, it actually was again another kind of pivotal point in my career development. So I moved from a small team of 8 people doing customer service at Go into managing a team of 60. By heading up a team of 60 advisors at EasyJet, all doing written customer service.
Customer service.
Yeah,
so emails and letters. Yeah.
So that's all they did in that team. Had a fantastic manager there. Really believed in me, supported me. Always there every kind of step of the way. It was a big step change for me to actually have that operational kind of leadership. So that was the first time that I'd managed team managers. So yeah.
How did you find that? What was your biggest challenge, having been a team leader, and then finding yourself managing team leaders? What was your biggest challenge in that step?
It was probably more psychological, kind of, not having that belief that, it's very different, isn't it, when you're kind of managing a team of managers against a team of advisors, because you're managing through managers, and it's getting that message and stuff down. So you've really got to really engage them so that they can then believe in that and then pass that onto the team. Whereas I think when you're a team manager, you're on that receiving end of it, and I don't know, it's you're one step removed, I think.
Yeah, so I guess you're one step removed from the front line, and when you're a team manager, you're managing people to have those interactions with the customer. But when you are the customer services manager managing team leaders, you're actually managing them to support their teams.
Yeah, definitely that. So had really supportive manager, and we were lucky that the director of customer service with the integration also came across, so I'd had really good relationships with him. And then there was further change within EasyJet, so they restructured the contact centre. So the contact centre was managed by someone else, doing sales and service. But what they wanted to do was actually put all of service together.
Right.
So the written and the telephony.
Yeah. So all channels under one roof.
Yeah, and then the sales team would be another team. So again, that was another step up. So I then moved from kind of 14 managers up to 12. Because the majority of, with the rise of the internet, the majority of the work that was in the contact center was customer service. And it was almost like a role reversal. So the sales ops manager ended up with a team the size of what I'd just left.
Because it was all being done by self-service.
Yes. So internet. So, just to give you a scale of that, there were around sort of 60 sales advisors, kind of, contributing 2% of the revenues. So the internet was taking 98% of the revenues, but the contact center budget was, target for housing around. So how it kind of progressed, would gone into billions by the time I'd left there. So I ended up with a team of around sort of 200, which then progressed on to our site in Luton, became too small to cope with growth. We outsourced some of our English.
Sorry to interrupt you, Vince. Can you still hear me okay? Okay, I can't hear you very well. For some reason, my sound has gone, but please do carry on. Please do carry on while I and continue through your story and going from EasyJet into NHS while I just sort out my sound.
I had an error message. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I can absolutely hear you
now. Okay. Sorry, everyone that's hopefully still listening to this.
It's okay. It's okay.
So I don't know how far you got.
So I was listening to EasyJet had the team had grown to 200. Tell us from there and sharing a little bit more of what you were talking about. But it'd be really interesting to hear how you then got into healthcare. So the NHS, and then you went through a number of head of operations roles. And so I'm conscious of time. So please do share with us your process through your progress through those roles.
Okay, so in terms of EasyJet, we made a decision to outsource the contact center.
Oh wow! Okay, you were there at that time.
Yeah, so I was there at that time. So that was a very challenging time, obviously, in that period. They'd asked me to stay on for a period of time to embed the new contact centers. I wasn't prepared to move to Germany or Poland and take my family with me. So, that was fine. And, I stuck around for 10 months and then took redundancy. Yeah. And then had a period of time off. And then I wanted to get into kind of maybe like a project management type role that had interested me. So my role at EasyJet was very much of both. Mm-hmm. So very strategic as well as kind of operational. So I managed to find a role locally in the NHS. And my project was to look at, so very different to what I was doing. It was an estates project, actually. So they were looking to centralise all of the kind of the nurses and the kind of clinical teams into one building. So I worked
in a call centre.
No.
So it was interesting.
So we had all the kind of district nurses and kind of health visitors all in different buildings. So they wanted to put them in one. Okay. So really different but very interesting.
Yeah.
And then the so during that time, the chief executive of the out of hours service for Barnet, Enfield, and Haringey visited that site to talk to one of the directors there. And the director there said, "Oh," and they were looking for a new head of head of operations. And as the chief exec of the out of hours organisation was driving out, he saw me walking around the site, and he wound his window down in his Jag, and said, "Oh, I've heard some really good things about you. We have a role to head up the operations, so the contact centre for the out of hours. Would you be interested?" So I said yes, and ended up at head of operations for GP out of hours, which was really fascinating, and that led me into my first kind of role, understanding kind of the clinical aspects. So I had operational responsibility. Sorry about that. Not clinical responsibility for the nurses and doctors, but whilst they were on duty, just making sure that the work that was coming in was being kind of looked after. So that was really fascinating, like that. And then I chose to move on to a private healthcare company, and they were doing NHS health checks. So being commissioned by local authorities to do NHS health checks out in the community, which again gave a bit of project management insight as well as operational. So again, looked after the kind of day-to-day nursing aspects of that. And then moved into NHS 111. So the GP out of hours that I worked for had the opportunity to bid for the NHS 111 service, but chose not to. And I thought that would be a really fascinating thing to do. So the organisation that did get that contract for our area, I had a chat with them. They had someone that was going on sabbatical, so I took on a interim role at NHS 111. Very contact centre.
Yeah.
Kind of run, very efficient. But the challenge there was that they found it very difficult to attract people. It was a 24/7 service. Performance was poor. NHS England was on their back. They had some really weird policies that they'd send taxis to people's homes at 6 a.m. to get them to work. So the taxi bill each month was horrific. But they felt that they had to do that to keep people in post. So I reviewed all of that, stopped that practice, and we got our recruitment and our onboarding processes sorted. And by the time I left there 10 months later, we were green on our dashboards. and we had a healthy kind of rota, I suppose. And then that takes me to where I am now. So I had that call, and I'm now doing a job that I absolutely love. Not that I didn't love those jobs, but I think the great thing is that I've had such a wide and broad range of experience in different industries, seeing contact centres from their start, but also process automation. So
Yes.
again, when I worked at British Gas, that was the start of, the very early primitive days of process automation, and it was really scary when you'd walk past, a bank of computers literally set up as computers, all doing something. And what that was the introduction of is kind of on, the contact center would fill in a form rather than do the back end, and they use something called Visual Basic to then do the processing.
Yep.
And that was just scary. I mean, I walked past to get a coffee, and like all these computers were doing, but no one was sitting at them. So
You know, it's so interesting hearing the variety of the roles. You haven't done not even a linear, not even a slightly a linear career path in the contact center, where you've gone into the contact center environment and then worked in different functions. I know you've done that too, but actually you've been out of the contact center. You started not in the contact center. There's and then you've taken that knowledge you've learned from being customer facing to other functions in a business, project management. It's fascinating to hear that. And a month ago, you celebrated getting your MBA with a Chartered Management Institute. So, what? First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Second of all, why did you do that? Why did you decide I'm going to go and do an MBA?
Well, I didn't decide actually.
Oh,
it
interesting.
was my manager.
Oh, interesting.
So she said, you are better than you believe. She didn't know why she'd been recruited into her role because someone's so capable. So she wanted to address that. So I reluctantly agreed to do an MBA.
And do you think that what you learnt through doing that that piece of learning? So there's two things that I think doing an MBA does. One is the learning, and obviously the models it teaches you and teaches you to think a little bit differently. There's the learning that comes through it. But I think there's another thing that comes from doing an MBA is your confidence.
Absolutely, totally agree. And on the first module, I learned something so fascinating, which I put into practice straight away, and I've seen the results of it.
Brilliant.
So that was around heroic management versus engaging management. So heroic is all about yourself.
Yeah.
So it's about you gaining skills and building up your knowledge and just thinking about your own development. Engaging management is about people and building them. So I've had as you know, we had Ed a couple of years back, didn't we, that got his gold award for multi-channel contact center team leader.
Yep.
So that was a really great moment. That was prior to the MBA, but I think I was on the right lines there of developing my team. But this just really compounded it. So it gave me the confidence that I was doing the right things on that journey of developing my team. So I've had 2 team members that I've developed to take on roles at the same level as me in the organization. So they're now kind of in that peer level, which was brilliant. And yeah, I think for me, my early career was heroic. So it was all about me gaining all of that knowledge. But, I see myself, in the latter parts of my career, actually bringing that all together, for the benefit of Diabetes UK as an organisation. So all those skill sets and that broad knowledge and, all those different operational kind of organisations, all the complexities, that gives me a really broad platform to be able to look at very different aspects across the organisation, and have valuable input into just maybe putting a light bulb in someone's head just from something that I've said, and then they want to know more, and how did that work, and can you help me, and the people side of things as well. So very strong ethos around helping people to be successful, and I don't have a problem with someone being more successful in their career than I've been. But yeah, so it becomes more about others.
So before I ask you my final rapid fire questions, what's the best advice that you ever received?
I would say, if I hark back to my EasyJet days, that was a moment of, oh my God, this is getting big.
Yeah.
And my line manager said to me, don't worry about it, because if you develop your team managers to a level, they'll actually do the work for you. All I saw was 200 advisors.
Yes.
And I think that came very true, and that helped me manage within myself the enormity of what was going on.
That's really interesting. Vince, this has been fascinating. But before I let you go and enjoy the rest of your day, I've got some rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, tea or coffee?
Right, tea at home, coffee at work. Why? I don't know.
You knew what my next question was going to be. Dark chocolate or milk chocolate?
Oh, definitely milk chocolate on that one.
Yeah, you and me both. And would you rather travel to the past or to the future?
I think to the future, but I think you have to travel to the past to make the future.
You know what, I totally agree. Vince, this has been fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing your career story with us. It really has been fascinating. And hey, if you want to listen to any other career, absolute pleasure. And yes, if anybody wants to listen to Career Talk again, then we have got lots of other career stories shared on ccma.org.uk. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for listening.